So as I said, like the step number one is setting up a very strict criteria. Step number two is like doing in-depth research. With diversification, you also increase your chances for a successful portfolio.
A lot of people are making AMMs and they look almost the same. A lot of people are looking at DEXs. So, and then assuming that the teams are also legit, they're good. But there's so much competition.
And sometimes even the smartest can be fooled. So that's something that one needs to be really careful with.
Hi everyone, we have a very special guest today. We have Paula Tavangar. She's a principal in Web3 VCs. And what's very exciting about this is we're gonna talk about very insightful topics on how you could spot projects early on. And we're gonna drill into her expertise. Paula, it's such an awesome feeling to have you here in the show. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, same here. Thank you so much, Marvin, for inviting me. I'm really, really excited for that.
Before we drill into how you analyze projects, I want to talk about first, what's your sense on where the market is right now, the current state of crypto? We've seen crashes from 2022. We've somehow stabilized a bit. Where are we now in this whole, if you're gonna look at it from a broader spectrum?
I think that we're in very interesting and opportunistic time. I have been talking to some of my very good friends from traditional finance that obviously we're following all the markets. You know, everything is interconnected. You cannot just isolate an asset class and do analysis on top of that only. Everything is interconnected, and I really feel that we're at a stage where no one certainly knows what direction we're going to take from there, because we had seen some very positive developments. Like from the beginning of the year, we started seeing a bit of a pickup, and how I define that pickup is not just price-wise, but like a bit more optimistic market. Like the same was reflected into the stocks as well. So, but at the same time, the economy is not really doing that much significantly better compared to, let's say, H2 last year. A lot had been happening, like everybody has been expecting basically the interest rate policy, and now that it's a bit more clear, like, does it mean that we have clear pathway in front of us, or it's more of like this is going to continue being a burden, and eventually we're going to have a light recession, and this is going to affect all asset classes. So yeah, whenever we have those discussions, usually everybody has very strong opinion. You know, they're like, oh, you know, I'm sure in September that's going to happen, this is going to happen. And now I feel that everyone is just waiting around to see what to do and potentially take a position. My personal view is, I think that in the beginning of the year, in most of the research reports, there was a saying that it's going to get way worse before it gets better. And then I don't feel that we passed that stage where it gets way worse yet. Yeah, I don't want to be pessimistic, but I really feel that there should be like something should shaken up the market that haven't happened yet. So for now, like, we're very silent on the sidelines, and that's what I've been seeing, by the way, from most of the professional investors. Everybody's trying to take minimum amount of risk, keep enough amount of liquidity to deploy, and just move slowly. But then if we talk about the venture capital only and like early stage investments and what the teams have been doing, I think that the space is booming and the developers are developing and we are obviously like there to support, but things obviously like move way slower than, let's say, 1.5, 2 years ago.
And I think that's what's interesting about VCs as compared to the ones in the open market already. There's more volatility when it's already in the markets versus they're relatively in its early stage still. Yeah. It's not subject to the volatility. I want to drill into what you mentioned earlier about rates. I'm just curious about this. That how do you think it would possibly go if the last rate hike would be actually the last already, and I think if that would be the last, then possibly months after it could possibly be cuts already, because I eventually think that at the end of all of this, the US will need to print, and for them to do that, the rates can't be that high also for that to actually happen. How will that go also for the markets as well?
Well, obviously everybody is waiting for this potential signal for rate cuts, that's really going to push the market. That will be a definite signal. But the thing is that we didn't get it. We got kind of the opposite, that the rates will stay high for a while, that there are no cuts envisioned anytime soon. This is what caused the confusion. Everybody was expecting exactly what you're saying, that, okay, we reached the peak, then a few months of these rates, and then we're just going to start cutting, and then the economy is going to be booming again. But I guess that this is not what's going to happen, and there will be a bit of like stagnation for a while, like things will not move fast. I think that all of us, we were predicting, I don't know, I guess towards the end of when we were in 2022, we were predicting that probably towards the end of 2023 we're going to start seeing that pickup and reversal. And now I think that this shifts, the more time passes, it always shifts, like with 1 quarter, with 2 quarters, and now based on the research reports I'm reading, like it's more shifted towards 2024.
Wow.
So we're going to see that, but as I'm saying, like right now, I think that everybody is a bit risk off and just holding off onto the liquidity and seeing where the market's going to head.
Keyword in what you said, everyone's in the sidelines, or at least a majority is in the sidelines, and keeping a good level of cash as well.
That's my personal observation, obviously.
Yep. And I wanna shift now to crypto and the projects that are there, and I want to give value to people who are watching this with the main goal is that they get to think the way you think. Of course, they can't get your years of expertise also, but here's what's interesting. There's so many projects trying to be a crypto project, a DeFi project, a metaverse project, an NFT project. Every day there's new projects coming in. What's your style? How do you sift through them? How would you know from the start if this is something that has potential? And the reason why I'm asking this also is that projects that people that get to buy already, they're probably much later, but I think the logic on how you analyze, they can also apply it as well.
It's a bit difficult. I never give advice, actually. I can just share some details of what we are doing to get to the stage where we invest. Big part of investment doesn't matter in which sector you are, because I have done a lot of cross asset previously. I think obviously it's tons of analysis, like having the background, doing your research, and then just taking the leap of faith. Okay. It's kind of a gut feeling at the end. Like obviously it's very like educated guess, but you can never be sure. But to make sure that you're as close to success as possible, as I said, a lot of analysis is involved. So I think this is a very standard process for most of the VCs in any sector. Actually, there is a certain criteria through which initially the project should start. Need to pass that criteria to basically even be reviewed by the team. So those can be, we set up, let's say, some target valuations, some target, maybe even would the platform already have users or no, like at what stage there. Obviously this is another thing to determine, like at what stage you want to invest. And multiple other things, like is the team experienced, etc. So once it passes through that basic criteria model, then you start digging deeper. So I think that as individual investors, like doesn't matter how much information we have, sometimes we just get tempted to do something, like getting emotional, and that's number one rule in finance. Never get emotional about things. Do your analysis and make an educated guess at the end. So I think that the part of research, for example, if you go you do your research about a certain project, and then let's see, you like the project, everything's fine, but then let's say the team is anonymous, like there is no team there, but in your criteria you have that there should be team, and then you should check the background. Don't get too emotional about the project and end up investing just because you liked it, but then you skip on your initial criteria, because these are the core values, I would say, like a project needs to have to potentially to increase the chances of it being successful. So as I said, like the step number one is setting up a very strict criteria. Step number two is like doing in-depth research. Don't get emotional, don't overstep any of the steps in the criteria that you already set. And last step is diversification. Like this, obviously this is something that changes from a firm to firm, like, and based on their investment thesis. Obviously there are venture capital firms that invest only into, let's say, healthcare, or only into gamify. But ideally, as individual investor, you want to be as diversified as possible, except if you're not a specialist. Let's say you're a medical specialist, so then I guess that you can focus on healthcare. But with diversification, you also increase your chances for a successful portfolio, because always there are cycles, so certain sectors will overperform or underperform, and then like this you can just balance all of the investments in the basket.
How important to you is there's a larger amount of users already? Because I wanna put it in this context. Like, there are a lot of projects that look almost the same. With, like, for example, a lot of people are making AMMs and they look almost the same. A lot of people are looking at DEXs. So, and then assuming that the teams are also legit, they're good. But there's so much competition also that they might be good, but because there's a lot of people also doing it, that they might be overshadowed, or they may not also gain traction also. How do you narrow it down with the plurality of projects out there?
We have ways, like there are even professional softwares and programs to check if the users are bots or they're real. And especially after the big case of JP Morgan, I think that now everyone is even more and more cautious about checking the actual activity on applications, because the reality of the situation is that it can be faked, and sometimes even the smartest can be fooled. So that's something that one needs to be really careful with, because when you're investing early stage, sometimes you might just invest in the idea, right? Sometimes there might be no users. The project might launch, let's say, in 1 year, in 6 months. But when it comes to users, obviously they pump up the valuation significantly. So it's very, very important to do your best to verify if the users are there or no. And I think that nowadays with the standard channels, like when it comes to followers, etc., like Twitter or Discord, then it's quite easy, to just go in and see like how many are currently online, like how many are the subscribers and how many are online at the moment. So like this you can determine if the number actually makes sense. Then you can just check, is the group actually active? Are those real people writing and being interested into the project? This is a simple check. And then, second step, if you want to get real serious about it, then obviously there are professional softwares with which you can also check.
How long does it take from the initial, when you start looking at a project, before you actually say that I'm okay investing in this? Is it a very long cycle that you go through different checks and comparing it also to other projects? So at the end of the day, VCs have a lot of money, but it's still finite. It's still not infinite, that you have to deploy it also properly as well.
Unfortunately for the projects, most of them know that the process sometimes might be very, very long. It's always different. And also it depends on the fund, it depends on the timing. So sometimes it might take a while, and sometimes even funds can follow up with you. Let's say there are certain milestones that they want to see before investing. So sometimes you might have kind of a soft commitment, but then you need to complete this and that for them to invest, which might take 6 months, might take a year even. So it's pretty slow. And I had seen a lot of founders actually getting really tired of the process. So at some point they just go to angel investors, or they search alternative roles. It's really difficult and hard to get VC firms on board. I would be very honest about it. So don't keep your expectation too high, because VCs receive immense amount of projects. And also once you have a portfolio, even if you receive a really, really good project, but then you see then you already have, let's say, 5 similar type of projects, you want to apply what I said in the beginning, diversification. So you don't want to be too saturated in one single sector. So sometimes you just like, we already invested in this, so we don't want to invest in you. So that's why I think the very best strategy for a project is to create its own traction. And very few firms can say no to a good investment. If something seems like it's very close to be successful, then you have your probably best chances to get funding from venture firms.